And good Yantif, Shana Tova, may it be a good year. We are gathered here, Jews from across the valley, in a moment of memorial and in solidarity. A year ago, by our calendar, a year ago on October 7th, the Jewish people witnessed the worst day, the worst massacre, the greatest tragedy our people had seen since the end of the Holocaust. And this has not been an easy year for any of us. Yet we have found ways to continue to be a light in the darkness, continuing to bring light into dark places, continuing to be a lamp of God. It is a tremendous honor for me to be here with representatives of our Jewish community, with Rabbi Frank Joseph. Thank you for being here, of Harlingen, as well as with Cantor Avery Tract, who is our high holiday cantor here at Temple Emanuel this year. We have, for this event, extended an invitation to all of the Jewish clergy of the valley and all of the Jews of the valley to be able to come together on this very important day. This is a Jewish moment. This is not a moment that we have opened up to all of our friends and neighbors, although we have friends and neighbors here with us because you are a part of our extended Jewish family. We have made sure that this could be a moment where we can share openly and honestly and in a way that brings healing as we come together this evening. October 7th, 2023 was a Saturday morning. It was a festival day, Simchat Torah, where we celebrate completing our annual reading of the Torah. It was a day in Israel of celebration as well, and a day in which our enemies, with more viciousness than we could imagine, chose to attack, chose to bring terror into the hearts of Jews all around the world, chose to bring destruction and death into the world. And we know that that destruction and death has not ceased even one day through this past year. It's a day in which our enemies took captive as hostages hundreds of people, Jews and non-Jews, Israelis and non-Israelis, Americans, and many others, kidnapping them and taking them hostage into Gaza. Among Jews, everyone is connected to Israel. Every one of you knows someone in Israel, has family in Israel, or have friends with close relations in Israel. Every single one of you, every single one of us. We are one family, one mishpacha, And to be able to come under one roof as a family this evening is a symbol of our incredible power and solidarity, that we will not let terror win, that we will let love and light be our guidance even in these dark times. This evening, you will hear not only from the clergy of the Rio Grande Valley, but also from those in our community who have served Israel in person over the past year. Joining us this evening either in person or by video for those who are still in Israel or still serving Israel at this time. It is a particular honor for me to welcome up to this bima Rabbi Frank Joseph, who is the longtime and I think I can say beloved rabbi of the Harlingen Temple of Beth Israel. And I invite him now to share some words of comfort that he has brought this evening. Thank you.
Well, first I want to thank Rabbi Farb for your kindnesses, your graciousness. Thank you for welcoming us to your beautiful, beautiful temple, your beautiful congregation, and thank you for the wonderful friendship for the past 3 years. One of the great blessings for me is the opportunity to know you and your family, and you and your family are a tremendous, tremendous blessing to the Rio Grande Valley, and may you be a part of the valley for decades to come. Decades. We're gathered here this evening, as we know, to remember the victims and the events of October the 7th. And I think one of the concepts that we need to remember is that we will see a better day. We will all live to see the better day. Israel will see a better day. Israel will be victorious. We will all live to see that better day. And we know this because of Jewish history. And Jewish history is a great window into the future, because we know through Jewish history that whenever a disaster befell the Jewish people, whether that was the destruction of the first temple in 586 by the Babylonians, when the Jewish people went into exile in Babylonia, from that point on through 2024, the Jewish people have always seen a better day, because they have always had we have always had a tremendous amount of hope. When the Jewish people were exiled into Babylonia in 586, they didn't give up hope. The prophets gave them hope, and they created a much stronger community than had previously existed before that time. And it was really in Babylonia that Judaism, as we know, began to develop to the Judaism that we practice today. But they became extremely creative, and they were determined that they would not assimilate with the other nations, like the other nations of the world, but they would keep their distinct identity, and the mission for which they were created they would bring to fruition, which was to be that light to the nations. And they did return to the land of Israel because they had that hope. And they were in Israel for 600 years when, once again, the Romans destroyed the second temple. And the worst disaster up until the Holocaust at that time was the destruction of the second temple in Jerusalem, where many, many, many Jewish people lost their lives. But they did not despair. And instead, what they did is they became a portable religion. The school became what the temple had provided, whereas the temple had provided spiritual comfort in the past and had been the central area where the Jewish people gathered. the school became the new sanctuary of the Jewish people. And so wherever Jewish people were, the written word, the book became the new temple, and their homes became small sanctuaries. And once again, they became much, much stronger than they had ever been before, because they always had hope. They didn't always have the answers, but one thing the Jewish people knew is, if we have hope, we will see that better day with God's help. And the Jewish people continued to be extremely creative and became the light to the nations, and were wonderful blessings to the world. And then once again, as we know, in the 1930s and 40s, the Holocaust occurred to the Jewish people, and 1/3 of the Jewish people were lost. But again, the Jewish people still did not give up hope. They kept that hope, that hatikvah, that they would see that better day. And miracle of miracles, even though it was a tragedy and 1/3 of the Jewish people had perished, within a few years, and we're talking about just a few years, with that hope, many of them went and helped reestablish the modern state of Israel, which truly is a marvel to the world. And the modern state of Israel has been one of the most dynamic, creative, and wonderful blessings, not just to the Jewish people, but to the entire world. But the Jewish people knew they would see a better day because they kept hope alive that they would. And then 75 years later, once again, we're faced with this tragedy, as Rabbi Farb said, the worst tragedy to occur to the Jewish people since the Holocaust. And we may not have the answers at this particular moment, and we may not know exactly at this particular moment what our future holds in store for us, but because we have our history and because our operating word is hope, one thing we do know, and I don't have the answers on how we will see that better day, but one thing that I wholeheartedly believe, and we as a people wholeheartedly believe, we will see a much, much, much better day in the future. We don't know how this is going to come about because we don't have the answers to the future in front of us. But what we do have that can never be shaken is that hope and that strong optimism and that strong Jewish belief that we will always see that better day. And so in the coming year of 5,785, we wish everyone a wonderful, happy, healthy, prosperous, peaceful, fulfilling new year. And may this year, during the coming year, be the year the hostages are released and Israel is victorious in all of their battles, and they start to rebuild and see a much, much better day than has ever existed before in the entire history of Israel. And we know that will happen because we have our history to prove it. Shana Tova.
Thank you, Rabbi. Shana Tova. I invite at this time our visiting Cantor Avery Tract, who's brought so much beautiful, prayerful music to our community already, and we know will continue to do so over these high holidays, to share a very special rendition. And I'll let you introduce the music, because I know that this is a piece that has some special characteristics to it as well.
I recently just heard this piece. This was not so long ago written by a woman by the name of Eliana Aryan. She is an American. It was inspired by the threefold benediction, Birkat Kohanim, that comes from our Bible, the Numbers. The words are in English, but we've changed them a little bit. so that they are appropriate for today. May they be saved. May they be free. May they find space to just be. Can you hear the song? Can you hear the song? May they find their way back home. Can you hear the song? Can you hear the song? May they find their way back home. May we be saved. May we be free. May we find space to just be. Can you hear the song? Can you hear the song? May we find our way back home. Can you hear the song? Can you hear the song? May we find our way back home. May they be saved. May they be free. May they find space to just be. Can you hear the song? Can you hear the song? May they find their way back home. Can you hear the song? Can you hear the song? May they find their way back home.
Ken hi ratzon. Yasher koach. A year ago on October 7th was a day of confusion and pain. We held a service here, for example, as many synagogues did, and in our entryway, in our rotunda, we had 600 candles to represent what we believed at the time to be the 600 lives that were lost. We found out as the days went on that the number was much greater. In fact, twice as many people were murdered on that day. As a Jew, not as a rabbi, but as a Jew, it took me most of a month to be able to express the pain and the loss that I felt. This is a poem that I wrote as we were approaching the 1 month mark following last October 7th. 30 days, Shloshim. Can we say Kaddish for each one? Please, say that we can stand up, that we can praise God's name one at a time, for each pair of lips which no longer move, who had yet to form so many songs and psalms, numberless poems and laughs and kisses on the cheek for their parents and their children, which now belong to silence. No longer praising the one who gave them the breath of life, but no, we would still be saying Kaddish for each life lost in the furnaces of the Shoah, one per Kaddish, morning, afternoon, and evening, for 1,000 years, and 1,000, and 1,000, and 1,000. And in your sight, God, 1,000 years are like a watch that passed in the night. Can we say Shloshim for each one? Not all at once, like nameless masses overlapping, like some of their sacred bodies were left, so that we had to x-ray the ashes to identify them, to see if they were one human vessel that once held light, or two. Can we pray Shloshim for each one at a time, from beginning to finish to beginning? No, because we would still be praying. Our children and our grandchildren would pray one at a time, 30 days, for 120 years. May their memory live even longer. And anyway, we would still not be finished with mourning each one who was martyred at Bar Kokhba. Can we sit Shiva for each one whose life was cut short? We say the names of the captives each week at my shul, 2 each week until they are returned safely home. 7 days we pray for each of their families to be whole again, knowing that a part of them has already been severed, that they will never be fully restored. No, because we would be sitting decades from now, and we have to raise a new generation who hasn't yet learned to stop dreaming of peace. May the one who makes peace on high make peace on our children one day. And anyway, we would still today not yet have finished sitting Shiva for each one whose life was ended in violence in the pogroms of Russia, Poland, Yemen, and Iraq. So we say them all at once. Kaddish for everyone, for the soldiers of Bar Kokhba and the IDF, for the morning watch and the night watch, for the towns besieged by the murderous mob in Russia and Poland and Yemen and Iraq and the south of Israel and so many others, for those who burned and those who fought and those who were buried in their clothes, and those who were buried in pieces, and all of those who will never be forgotten. May their memories come to be a blessing. We now have special words from a member of our own greater RGV community joining us by video, and I'd like to once again invite up Rabbi Frank Joseph to say a few words of introduction before we hear from Deborah Russick.
Thank you. When my wife Laurie and I first came to the Rio Grande Valley about 24 years ago, almost 25, one of the first families that we had the pleasure and privilege of meeting was the Russick family. And getting to know Fernando and Alma and their 3 children, Deborah, Rachel, and Rebecca, was a wonderful experience. A few years later, Yafa would be born, and in 2003, we had the wonderful pleasure and privilege of meeting Fernando's father, Ephraim, and his wife, Teresa, and 2 of Fernando's brothers, Eli and Emanuel. Now, the Russicks were completely involved and immersed in every aspect of synagogue life. In 2003, Fernando became the president of the congregation and rebuilt our religion school. In 2005, he became the director of our religion school, and we were very blessed to have the religion school. Now, it was wonderful getting to know Eli and Emanuel, Fernando's brothers, and one of the reasons that I'd approached Rabbi Favre about Eli and about Deborah both is because Eli and Deborah began their Jewish education at Temple Emmanuel, which was their first introduction to Jewish education. They lived in McAllen at the time, and they were students in the religion school here at Temple Emmanuel in McAllen for a number of years. And it was here that they first began to develop their Jewish education, their interest in Judaism, and had it peaked. In 2003, at the end of 2003, Eli became my student, and he became the first bar mitzvah student that I had the pleasure of having the simcha at Temple Beth Israel in Harlingen. So the first bar mitzvah that I ever had in Harlingen was Eli Russick. And a few years later, Deborah would celebrate her bat mitzvah at Temple Beth Israel as well. Eli became one of my first confirmation students in Harlingen, and both Deborah and Eli were serious, dedicated, wonderful students. And there's one incident that to me epitomized the character of Eli Russick more than any other, and that occurred shortly after his confirmation. Beginning in 2005, every several years, we would take our confirmation students and graduates to a field trip to the Holocaust Memorial Museum in Houston. We would always go to Shabbat services on Saturday. However, on Sunday morning, we would generally go to a Jewish deli in Houston. Now, that Sunday morning that Eli was with us, he got up early and he put a suit on. He was completely dressed in his suit because he thought what we would be doing was going to Sunday morning services as well. He thought that would be a part of our itinerary as well. So he was completely dressed, ready to go to Sunday morning services after having gone to Shabbat services. And I'd never seen one of the students that we've had on these trips before completely dressed on Sunday morning, ready and eager to go to a Sunday morning minyan. To me, though, that epitomized the essence of Eli Russick. Eli was also one of the most humble, gracious, and polite students that I ever had. Deborah was also a wonderful student, and sometime after her bat mitzvah, she announced that she would be attending high school in Israel. There is also an event that stands out in our minds as to the essence and character of Deborah Rusek. In 2014, Lori and I went to Israel on a trip with the Koppel family in order for us all to enjoy a wonderful Shabbat afternoon meal in Jerusalem. Deborah and Eli and a few friends of theirs went to Herculean lengths, great lengths, to turn their small Jerusalem apartment into a wonderful dwelling for 16 people. But the meal and atmosphere was spectacular. They were extremely gracious hosts and hostesses, and everyone had a wonderful Shabbat experience. It is a wonderful mitzvah to make aliyah and to help rebuild and ensure the future and security of Israel. If any two individuals are completely dedicated to making Eretz Yisrael the vibrant spiritual nation it is, and to defending and securing its future, it is certainly Deborah and Eli Rusek. And if Deborah and Eli are representative of the spirit, character, and future of Israel, then we have every single reason to be optimistic and hopeful that Israel will be victorious and Israel will continue in its wonderful mission and goals. And as we said, we will see that better day. We pray for the release of the hostages, the safety of all serving in the IDF, and the well-being of all its citizens. And on behalf of Jews throughout the world, and especially on behalf of Deborah and Eli, we say, Am Yisrael Chai, the people of Israel live, the people of Israel will flourish. Thank you. And it is a wonderful pleasure and privilege to be able to introduce the video that Deborah Rusek has put together on what it was like hearing the sirens in Jerusalem on October the 7th.
Hi, my name is Debbie Rusek, and I grew up in Harlingen, Texas. I was a student at the Sunday school in Temple Emanuel when I was young in the 90s as a little girl. I moved to Israel when I was 15. I did a program my sophomore through senior year of high school to finish high school in Israel and study in a boarding school. I came back and then I made Aliyah officially in 2013. I really wanted to join the IDF and contribute my part to the state of Israel. I joined the Army in November of 2013. I served in what's called the Foreign Relations Unit. I started off as an NCO working in the liaison with the Jordanian Army, and then I went to officer school. I did officer school for about half a year, and then I came back to my unit in a different place, and I served as an officer in what was called the Military Strategic Information Section, which was a section in charge of providing information, updates, briefings to foreign militaries. My unit worked with foreign militaries, and I specifically was in charge of providing this information to and keeping the foreign military attaches in Israel updated, as well as our attaches abroad. On October 7th of last year, I was living in Jerusalem with my uncle, who you'll see in the other video. I'm not sure which one you'll see first. And I remembered that morning it was Shabbat and Simchat Torah. I was sleeping. I'd fallen asleep on the couch. I sleep pretty heavily. I normally don't hear anything. In fact, I'm quite stressed out as a human that I won't hear sirens. And I actually woke up to the sirens. And it's very strange to have sirens in Jerusalem because it's pretty far and it's not like a main target. Usually like there's sirens in the south or there's sirens in the north. I woke up to sirens, very confused, and I ran to my uncle's room and I said, Eli, there are sirens. We have to go to the stairwell. At first he said, those are just ambulances, go to sleep, I'm tired. And I said, no, they're sirens for rockets, like please get up and let's go to the stairwell. He finally wakes up, we go to the stairwell, all our neighbors are sitting there, and we hear the booms, and as someone who's not used to rockets, despite living in Israel for so many years, it's quite scary to feel the whole building shake and hear the explosions up above you or nearby you. The reason we go to the stairwell is because in Jerusalem, most of the buildings are pretty old, and only the newer buildings have bomb shelters inside of an apartment. Our building actually did have a bomb shelter in the bottom of the building, but most Israelis, especially in places like Jerusalem where there's not a lot of sirens, take advantage and just use it as a storage. So ours was locked and filled with people's junk. So we couldn't go there, which means if a rocket fell on our building, we were screwed. We realized something was strange when it wasn't just one siren or even two sirens, but like multiple sirens. We actually spent, I think, the majority of the first half of the day in the stairwell because sirens just kept going on and on and on and on. We opened up our phones to check what was going on because we felt like something was off, and no actual news website was reporting what was going on, but people were posting on the internet videos that they were getting from their friends, from their families, or from the Telegram groups where Hamas was posting what they were doing. And we saw videos of terrorists inside of Israel driving through villages. In the beginning, no one really understood what was going on because no news outlet was reporting it and because the government hadn't come out with an official statement. But at some point, the Prime Minister of Israel, Bibi Netanyahu, actually went on live television and declared that Israel is in a state of war. And in Israel, to be in a state of war is a very drastic and big deal because even when there are operations, like in 2014, Operation Protective Edge in Gaza, that wasn't a state of war. My uncle got called to the reserves that same day and left. I got called to the reserves to show up the next morning. And I remember normally Jerusalem on Shabbat and on Chag is full of people walking outside. It was like a beautiful day and it was dead. No one walking outside. The only thing you saw were soldiers, reserve soldiers with their backpacks, with their equipment, going to get rides to go to the army. The morning of October 8, I showed up and reported to the Kiryah, which is in the IDF headquarters in Tel Aviv. And even though I'm still doing reserves for my unit where I served as an officer, I got sent to be the representative in one of the departments of the operations division, the heart of the operations division, which is in this base underground, a few stories underground. I would say it took about 1 to 2 weeks to take back control of the South. I remember there were still terrorists, they were still looking for terrorists, they were still fighting, they were still finding people. I think it took also like a week or two to kind of more or less understand what had happened. And it took weeks or months even to find all the bodies, find all the body pieces, try and identify people. I remember seeing friends posting on their Instagrams, like, has anyone seen my cousin? Has anyone seen my friend? They were at this festival, like, no one's heard from them, please, like, if you know anything. The department that I was doing reserves in was composed of representatives from multiple units all over the IDF and outside of the IDF that worked with outsiders, I guess you could say. There was the IDF spokesperson unit, there was someone from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, there was my unit where we worked with foreign militaries, and my job specifically in the beginning was to make sure we were getting a lot of pictures and videos and content from what had happened in the South, and we had to get it out. We had to show the world what Hamas had done and the atrocities. So I was in charge of getting the material, going through it, filtering it, sending it to my unit, which was very hard. I wasn't even there in person. I didn't see it in person, but even just the pictures and the videos stayed embedded in my brain. There's some of it we didn't send out because it was too gruesome and they just showed it privately to other officials. I think I couldn't sleep for weeks in the beginning. I don't think many of us could. And to this day, I still have nightmares sometimes of terrorists coming into my home, which I think, again, is something that most of Israel probably is scared of. I served for a total of 4 months in the reserves. Again, making sure to always keep foreign militaries updated with what was going on, especially because there was so much disinformation, misinformation going out, so many lies, so much terror propaganda, and people were believing this stuff. The reason I left after 4 months is because I actually got a job in Paris, and I moved to Paris, which is where I live now. I work as assistant to the Defense Attaché of Israel to France, Spain, and Portugal. So now I went back to working with foreign militaries and Ministry of Defenses, like I did in the Army and like I did in the reserves. Now it's been a year since October 7th, which is crazy because I think to many of us it still feels like it was just yesterday, and we can't believe it's actually been a year. And sadly, we still have over 100 hostages in Gaza that we have been unable to take out, and Hamas refuses to give back. And now we're also at war in the north and not just the south, even though Hezbollah has been attacking Israel since October 8th of last year. We've now officially sent in ground troops, including many of my friends that fought in Gaza and made it out and are now being sent to Lebanon to face an enemy that is 100 times smarter, better trained, and scarier than Hamas terrorists. But we have to do it because we can't let them commit another October 7th, which is their plan. I've seen their literal plan. It's called the plan to conquer the Galilee, and commit their own version of October 7th, but on a much larger scale and much worse, which obviously Israel can't allow that to happen again. I think the fact that Israel has been able to fight this war for a year and is still standing despite being attacked from Gaza, from Lebanon, from Syria, from Iraq, from Iran, from Yemen, and the West Bank is a miracle, honestly, especially because I see we don't have a lot of allies, we don't have a lot of friends. Even though we don't have so many allies or friends, we're definitely grateful for the ones that we do and for the people who support us and Israel and what we're doing in the fight against terror and the fight for our survival and the fight for our right to live in peace without being scared that terrorists are going to come into your house and burn you and kill you and chop you up into pieces. We're grateful for all those people who help us fight the terror propaganda war that is raging hard throughout the world, and especially in the US and in Europe. God willing, the war will end soon, and our soldiers and our hostages will come back alive and whole in one piece. And our enemies will finally be defeated. Amen.
It certainly takes great courage to continue to be a voice for Israel as an Israeli. It also takes great courage to leave the safety of our homes here in America and travel to Israel in this time of war to help and serve the community there and to bear witness. In our community, there are several of those who have done so, including Jonathan Weisfeld, who is maybe the most passionate pro-Israel voice that I know in our community, and if not, certainly he's in the running. We appreciate him for being a part of our community and for doing his part to represent our community in Israel. I'd like to invite him to speak a few words about his visit there, what he saw and what he did.
Okay. Good evening. So I want to share my story about October 7th and forward. So I went to bed on October 6th, 2023. It was my birthday. It's my 31st birthday. Thinking, that all was well in the world. I thought peace was achievable in Israel. There was rumors that we're close to a peace agreement with Saudi Arabia, and I thought, finally, peace in our lifetime. And fortunately, I woke up the next morning and I started seeing the videos on Instagram, and immediately, you knew something was wrong. We all knew something was wrong. This was different. And for the next week, several weeks, I felt very like cold, like my fire was just really dim, and I needed to do something. And so I reached out to my friends. One actually, Debbie Rusick, on October 7th, I messaged her asking her if everything was okay, and she desperately was trying to get in contact with her parents. And her parents just happened to be in McAllen at Chabad. And so I wasn't here, but I called my dad, and he drove over and let them know because her uncle, Ellie, who we're going to hear from in a few minutes, had been called up from the reserves, and it was a very scary time for all of us. So eventually I started posting, resharing on Instagram and social media, trying to combat the social media war that we were really desperately losing at the time with all the propaganda that was being posted, essentially supporting Hamas and justifying what happened on October 7th. And then one day I scrolled along and I found an ad from Birthright, who was, putting on these trips to Israel, volunteer missions through an Onward program. And I seized the opportunity. I signed up. I emailed. I was able to get on a trip over the New Year's. So I had to pay my own way. The only thing that the organization provided was room in a hostel and a $700 Uber credit, which came in handy with the food, but it wasn't $700, 700 shekels, so that was, I don't know, like $220 for 3 weeks. So I just want to talk about some of these photos along the way. So let's see. There it is. When I arrived at Ben Gurion Airport, stepped off the plane. The first thing that you see are the pictures, the posters of the hostages. And at that moment, it really struck me. This is why I came here. This is what I'm here for, to support Israel and to be a voice to bring the hostages home. So the hostel they put us up in was in Tel Aviv. It was actually pretty nice. It was the Lena Hotel or hostel. That was a view from my room. You can see we had 3 of us in one room, 3 beds. I took the far end, and then 2 friends I made, Ariel, and was in the middle, and Drew's on the far right end. And it was 3 of us in there, very tight quarters, and that was where we lived. Let's see, the rooftop was an area where we spent a lot of time in the studio.
What is it called? Law. I used to do med-mal defense. So I used to.
Made a lot of friends. There, a trip of soul building and connection. Let's see if we can get this next slide. So at 6 a.m., really 5 in the morning, we wake up and get on the bus at 6 a.m. to drive out to Kfar Hess, which was just north of Tel Aviv. It was a moshav. And there was a few different tasks that we got to choose from. We either went and picked tomatoes which we have here. We picked big tomatoes, we picked small tomatoes, and honestly, that was maybe one of the harder jobs for me because we actually had to trim vines for the first week, which means I was all the way on the ground, kind of looking up, just scooting my butt over, and cleaning it up so that when we went and picked the tomatoes, it was a much easier job. We also picked cherry tomatoes, and you can see in the picture up in the center, on my bus, there was about, I think, around 50 of us, and at that moment, I think there was close to 300 other volunteers that had came in during that time. Up to our trip in December, there had been at least 10,000 volunteers, and they had over 15,000 more applications. And all of these started in the mid-November. So it was a lot of young Jews like myself who were taking advantage of this opportunity to go and support the food safety of Israel. Also picked a lot of grapefruit. We picked almost 36 tons of grapefruit. I spent most of my time in the orchards. I felt it was something that was part of also my family, because my grandfather and great-grandfather, when they first moved down here, we were grapefruit farmers, right? And so we picked a lot of grapefruit, and so I picked a lot of grapefruit in Israel. The first orchard we got to, we cleaned it up, and it was about, I think, 26 tons. We filled up that entire red crate. Honestly, it was too much fun for me. I was ready. I was like, oh, you know what? I'm just going to work on the mashal for the rest of my life and pick grapefruit. As we were climbing up in the trees, we were picking them down. We were having a good time. This orchard specifically was owned by a Not in Iran, and they were an elder couple who we love dearly. And they had owned both one orchard for 50 years, another for 30 years. On October 7th, none of their workers showed up. A lot of these moshavs and kibbutzes and the orchards and the farms and the greenhouses, their workers were either Palestinian workers who were there on work visas, and that made up about 60 to 70% of the workforce, or they were Thai skilled labor workers who made up about 15 to 20% of the workforce, or Israelis who were in the area, and that was about 5 to 10% of the workforce. For the tomato greenhouses, 70% of their workforce didn't show up on October 7th. It was only the Thai workers. And in the days after October 7th, the King of Thailand offered all of his citizens free tickets home and incentives to get jobs back home. And so a lot of the Thai workers took that opportunity and left, at least on this moshav. And so they were left with about 5% of Israeli workers who were there, who then also had to leave because they were called up in the reserves. So there is a major workforce shortage in picking all of the fruits and vegetables, the produce in Israel. And at Anat and Iran's, 100% of their workers were Palestinian Arabs who didn't show up after October 7th. One of the other activities that we got to take part in was barbecuing for the soldiers. Now, this was an off the program trip. It was very scary at the time to think about it because they told us as part of the program, we can't go south. And where did everybody want to go was south. And so we got connected with this organization that was doing barbecues for the soldiers at different bases in the south. And so we were in Tel Aviv, and we walked about 20 minutes to this location on the map. That's all we had. They said, just be there, 7:30, get on the bus and go. And so we got there. There's no one there. We're the first group. There was about 6 of us from my group that went. And then somebody walked up talking on the phone, says, I'm here, I don't see anybody. It's like, oh, we're the people. Like, oh, you know, everybody's showing up. And then all of a sudden, these 2 Sprinter vans appear. And the Sprinter, everyone's like, okay, someone designated themselves leader, said, load up. And we hopped on, and we started driving. So we started driving south, and someone in the front of the bus started talking to the driver, and we found out that actually he's Palestinian Arab, but he has residency, and suddenly everybody got a little scared. What are we doing? You know, we're just foreigners on a bus in Israel going south towards Gaza. But all was well, and we made it to Kibbutz Niram. And if you don't know where Kibbutz Niram is, it's if you know some of the geography of Israel, it's south of Sderot, and it's at the corner, it's on the border of Gaza and Israel. And so when we got there, we thought there was going to be security and everything. No, they opened the gate, we rolled right through, and we got off, and we just started unloading barbecue pits. You know, we got food out. There was another group that had already been there. That was the advanced team that was kind of, organizing all this. And so Kibbutz Niram was one of the kibbutz that was successfully defended by the soldiers, because it was one of the closest to Sderot and where all of the military was. And I'm blanking on her name right now, but one of the soldiers that was stationed at Kibbutz Niram, the morning of October 7th, the electricity had been cut and the gate was closed. And so the kibbutzim, the members of the community, were trying to figure out how to open the gate. They were going to turn the electricity on, but she said no. You know, keep it closed, keep electricity off, because she knew. And because she took that action, it kept the gate closed, and the first wave of terrorists rode right past, and they didn't go in. And then eventually, one of the motor brigades showed up, and they were able to defend the kibbutz. We also have an opportunity to go to United Hatzalah, which is in Jerusalem. United Hatzalah is a very, it's a great organization. They are kind of provide medical services, ambulances. So where Mogen David Adom is like the state ambulance service, United Hatzalah is supported by private donors. And being able to tour the facility was a great experience. So this room that's here is their operations center. And that's where every single phone call, like 911 calls, will come in and are answered. So they'll either send ambulances, they have people all across the nation. They say, if you call United Hatzalah, within 90 seconds, there's somebody that's in range that can get to you, which is pretty amazing if you think about it. But on October 7th, they called it it was a command center for seeing what was the whole picture of what was going on, because they were receiving phone calls from across Israel with reports of terrorists here, someone's been shot here, and their board was lit up. So you can't really see it in the back, those little green tabs. That was where there's a map, and if you could just, they showed us a picture where it was just lit up with all the phone calls and service requests. So there's also, everywhere we went, there is reminders of why we were there. Here we have I went to the Nova exhibition, and that was maybe one of the most impactful moments, was walking through this exhibit. So they took the Nova Festival, everything that was there afterwards, and they placed it into this exhibition hall. So all the camp tents, the rugs, the shoes, the clothes, the porta potties, the cars, it was there for us to see and touch and take in. What was one of the most striking things for me, I like to play backgammon, shabbats, and there was a backgammon set that was right there, people playing, their clothes, the shoes of all of the Nova Festival goers who just lost them as they were running away, the clothes that was left over. There's a picture in the top right of the Shabbos table in Hostage Square, which was the hostage and families organization was stationed 24/7, where you could go and listen to family members. They had music, all to remember the hostages. On the bottom right-hand corner was a teddy bear that was blood-stained as a memory for all of the children who were also killed on 10/7. And I made a lot of friends along the way. And I think the friends that I made on this trip were really who gave me the spirit and the energy and the flame and really just ignited my neshama. We had people from all around the world. It wasn't just the United States. We had people from Canada, from Scotland, from Germany, from Spain. There were people from the Netherlands and France and all over who were coming to volunteer. This photo, the second photo from was at the right, your left, it was a knot in Iran, and that was the couple who owned the orchard that we picked at. These were, and in that photo in the left, in the middle, you can't really tell, we all look the same. But those were a knot in Iran's children who we got to meet, and both of them were intelligence. So they were just listening to calls all day. Some more photos. We got to go to Jerusalem and pray at the wall, pray for the hostages' return, and have a lot of great food, which the next picture is supposed to have food, but there it is what it is. So my trip was very inspiring for me to meet so many people who made the same decision to go across to Israel to volunteer in Israel's time of need, to support our people, our community, and really be a light among the world. If there's one thing, message I want to leave, it's call to action. And that's, first and foremost, we need to continue to remember the hostages and make it known that we're here and that we want them to come home. I strongly encourage anybody who's interested to volunteer, to go to Israel, to travel. College kids, it's very important for them to stay engaged. Our college campuses are constantly having, especially here at UTRGV, protests and these days of rage. Today I went on campus and I saw another protest where on October 7th they were protesting Israel. shouting anti-Semitic remarks and blaming Israel for what occurred on October 7th and celebrating what they called as justified resistance. So we need to ensure that our message stays strong, that we stay strong and keep the hostages in our hearts and ensure and do what we can to ensure peace, safety, and security for Israel and the Jewish people worldwide. Thank you.
Jonathan, thank you for sharing those words, sharing your experiences with us so that we could be a part of your journey as well. We have a few words you mentioned, and Deborah mentioned also Eli Rusick, who has been in Israel for a number of years and also was able to join us by video and share a few words about his experience as a first-hand account on October 7th.
Hi everybody, my name is Eli Rusick. I used to be a former Sunday school student in Temple Emanuel. I grew up in Texas, moved around Brownsville and Harlingen. I made Aliyah in 2009. Have been living here for 15 years now, don't regret a single day of it. I joined the Army as a paratrooper and I have been in the reserve unit since then. I'm part of the 551 Brigade, which is composed of former paratroopers and commando units. I'm part of the battalion that is responsible for recovering the wounded and dead from combat zones and bringing them back safely to our side. I want to talk to you guys a little bit of where I was on October 7th and my part in that situation as we're coming up to the 1-year mark. On October 7th, I got awoken to sirens over Jerusalem. So I realized this was an unregular amount of rockets being fired. I knew that this was way more serious than previous encounters with Hamas. I looked at the news on my phone and realized the gravity of the situation and how bad it was, and I knew I was probably going to get called up really soon. In the mid-afternoon, I got the message from my reserve unit to report down south and get ready for combat. As I was arriving down to the base down south, rockets were still being launched over us, and I could tell you one thing is that all of the reserve soldiers that were there, I saw no fear in any of them, and I knew that we all had a purpose and that what we were there for was the right thing, and I felt a sense of unity again in Israel. We started getting our equipment, our ammo, our uniforms, getting ready for combat, and those squadrons that had already gotten completed started to be deployed to the border area to combat the terrorists and recover the wounded and the dead from the zones. And 2 weeks later, my unit was the first to go into Gaza and start the war. I was there for about 2 months, and when I got switched out around December, after that I was called up to Metula for another 2 months. I could tell you that Metula was mentally harder than Gaza was, and mainly because we felt restrained and unable to really do much except for just being there as a preventive force in case any Hezbollah militants tried to cross over. The north was, it was non-stop rockets, non-stop drones, and got out of there for about 2 months ago. And now, as we're in this situation where we finally started to move our troops into Lebanon and try to secure the border, more and more brigades have been called up. My brigade has started to get called up, so I'm probably going to get called up soon, but that's okay. I understand that we have to do this in order to bring back prosperity and peace to the citizens of Israel as we move into another year of this war, and hopefully it ends soon. I wish you guys a happy Shana Tova and Umetuka, prosperity for all of Israel, all of the world, and God bless.
Amen. Amen. An evening like this helps us to feel closer to our family, our brothers and sisters and cousins, our mishpacha, all those who are suffering halfway around the world in Israel. Of course, those who are able to be there in person are able to experience that in a stronger way and bring back an impact into our community here as well. We are one people, and to be able to share these memories, these experiences, these human stories, not news headlines, but the human stories, help us to continue to feel close to our family in Israel. And so it's my honor to welcome up Claudia and Herschel Silberman, who also spent time in Israel serving the community there and representing our community. Thank you for helping to build our connection with Eretz Yisrael.
Good evening. Obviously, this is a sad night for everybody as we remember so many of our brothers, sisters, kids, and soldiers that have perished over the last year. The message, I think, of the whole night today is two things. Number one is never again, and the second message is bring them back home. And we have to keep fighting and supporting and doing everything to, so we can bring them back home. This is the picture of Ben Shimoni. Ben Shimoni was a 31-year-old young kid or young man that had a business in Jerusalem. He loved life and music. He was on the Nova Festival on October the 7th when Hamas attacked. At that time, when he felt the terrorists coming, he grabbed his car, and 4 girls actually went into his car, and he drove them all the way back to Beersheba. When he arrived to Beersheba, all his family pleaded to him, don't go back. But he said, no, I'm going to go back. And Ben Shimoni actually took his car and decided to go back to Reim, actually the kibbutz where the Nova Festival was. And there he picked up another 5 people, and actually he took them to safety and saved their lives. When he got there, actually, they told him, his family told him, Ben, please stay. And he said, no, I have to go back. On the 3rd trip, actually, he picked up one of his best friends, 2 more people. Unfortunately, they were ambushed by Hamas terrorists, and he ended up dying. One of the things that actually it's more impactful when you go to visit the Nova Festival is they saved the car along with many, many cars from the kids that were there enjoying life and music. And there's a cemetery of cars, and that is the car of Ben Shimoni, at the time that he ended up dying. He was a true hero. And actually, our daughter Nicole, who's in Israel spending a year now, sent us a picture of this man. This man is Ben Shimoni's father. And actually, every day, he goes to the Nova Festival and shares the heroic story of his son with anybody that wants. And actually, our daughter was so impacted by listening to the father. And what he listened was not a story of sadness, was a story of pride, a story of saying, my son, did this, and I'm here to remember him. And the only way I'm going to remember his memory is by sharing his story. It's a story of heroism. This is the picture of Danny Levy. Danny Levy was a 31-year-old physician that actually made Aliyah from Peru a few years ago, and he was working in the emergency department of Soroka Hospital, which is one of the biggest hospitals actually the biggest hospital in the southern part of Israel. Danny was a member of Kibbutz Be'eri. As you may know or you remember, Kibbutz Be'eri was probably the place where most of the one of the largest amount of casualties and murders happened. Danny that day was with his family. He had two little daughters and his wife. And actually, when he was with them at home, he was called because they told him that the infirmary, they were getting a huge amount of wounded people. So he told his wife, you stay here in the miklat, which is the refuge, and I'm going to go and help people. Then he went and helped, and he stayed there, and he stayed there, up until nobody heard any more from Danny. Actually, he died and was killed by the Hamas terrorists while doing the ultimate thing that a physician can do, which is help other people. This is just to give some context of what happened, on October the 7th. You can see all the red dots were all the places that were attacked. And as you see in the upper right corner, more than 1,200 people were murdered that day. More than 236 people were kidnapped. And we still have at least 101 of our brothers there that we don't know, and they are still, in the hands of these terrorists, and nobody knows what their fate is. The only thing that we know is that we need to fight and stay, and support them and do everything that we can do for them.
So after October 7, Herschel and I were talking for a long time and thinking that we really wanted to go to Israel and help. We talked to some friends from Peru that had gone, and they were there in January. So they told us the things that they were able to do while they were in Israel. So with our busy lives and things happening here, we couldn't make it until the summer. So we finally went to Israel in June 23 through July 6. And the whole purpose of the trip was to go and volunteer as much as we could. So we talked to these friends, and they explained to us, listen, it's not that hard. Actually, what you can do is get there. They included our names in these group chats in WhatsApp. And we found out that in the chats, they will tell you every week what they were doing for the rest of the week. So let's say on Sunday or right after Shabbat, they will say, okay, there are buses going on Monday to this kibbutz to pick up oranges. There are buses going from Tel Aviv to go pick up peppers in another kibbutz, and they will give you a schedule. So you could have the choice of joining them in their buses and be picked up by the bus that they had, or you could have the choice of driving yourselves. Well, Herschel and I were able to stay at my brother's apartment in Tel Aviv, and my nephew lended us his car. So we were able to drive ourselves to every place that we wanted to go and help that was posted in the chat. We only had to fill out an application, like a card with our information, and just say that we were going, that's all. So we started volunteering in every opportunity that we had during those 2 weeks.
So the first day, actually, we ended up going to a place that's called Kibbutz Reim. Just to give you some context again, Nova Festival was within Kibbutz Reim. And actually, it's about, depending upon where you are in the kibbutz, about 3 miles away from Gaza. And where we were in the Orange Orchard was about 700 meters from Gaza. So the first day we showed up 7 in the morning, we were super excited. And suddenly when we get with our contact there, who was one of the members of the kibbutz that actually had come back, to try to save the orange crop, suddenly we start hearing, first of all, suddenly we start hearing some deep noise like boom, and boom, and boom. And then we remember the words of our daughters that were telling us, before you go, just be sure that you're in safe places. So we looked at our contact there and told him, so what do we do? And basically, he looked at us, just be sure that you lay down in a safe place if you have to, and then after that we keep picking up the oranges. And so that's what we did, and interestingly, you have to realize that nobody picks oranges in Israel in June. What happens is because there's no workers, the kibbutzim in the south are desperate, to have people going there to help. And that's the reason why we were trying to save whatever can be saved, because this is the life of the kibbutz. This is the way they survive and they're sustained. And when you talk with Nif, actually, that was our contact there, he will tell us, I want to come back, and I want to come back, and be able to keep the kibbutz going. And that's something that made us feel special, because at least we could put a little bit of, like a grain of salt to try to help them survive. But what made us even feel even more amazed was this picture on the left. Obviously in the right you see a very beautiful girl, but on the left you see this guy that he's about 80 years old. His name was Israel. Israel is one of the Israelis, and actually when we went there, a little bit different probably when Jonathan was there, is most of the people that came to help were Israelis. About 20% of the people helping were non-Israelis. And Israel is actually an 80-year-old guy that actually he had fought already in the Six-Day War as well as in the War of Yom Kippur. And actually he had more energy picking oranges than me, Claudia, and anybody else together, But besides that, the pride that he transmitted, and actually when we were talking with him, it was amazing, because he was thanking us about thanks for coming. And actually, me and Claudia look at each other like saying, there's nothing to thank us. We're brothers. We're here together. Actually, we spent some time. We were able to pray with him together and with other people while we were in Israel. And it was a very emotional and particular day in Reim.
So let me tell you about another experience we had. So another day we went to Moshav Fahim. And the task was to box melons and watermelons, and we spent hours doing that. It was kind of heavy, and then putting them first lower in the box until you box the whole thing. But what really touched my heart, what was really incredible that day, is that all of a sudden we see a bus full of, paratroopers, right? Paratroopers from the IDF, all in uniform, coming down of the bus to help that day at the Moshav to do the same thing we were doing. So that was their day off, from the IDF, servicing the IDF. And what do? They don't go home. They don't stay in a quiet place. They come here to help packing the melons. So we realized right there that it was really important, again, to do something, because as Jonathan already explained, there were no workers. And we are talking about June already, so it was many days, 260 days after what happened in October 7, and they are still in need of help. Another experience we had, again, everything through the phone. These organizations will list the things that they were doing every week, and you just could join them as easy as that. You didn't have to plan ahead. So we drove to this mcallen organic farm, which is an organic farm run by the family. And so we went, and twice actually, to the same place. The first time, it's more of the pictures of the left, we were removing wheat from cabbage farm. And that was very hard because it was in June, in the summer, and trying to take all the wheat from the cabbage. And again, we were joined. We were the minority. Everybody there was Israeli. There was a big group of Israeli coming in by bus that they picked them up from Tel Aviv or from Jerusalem. Next to me is my cousin. She's from Peru. She's my first cousin, and she wanted to do the same. So she said, hey, if you guys are going, I'm going to join you. I don't want to go by myself. So she came with us, with Herschel and I, in all our trips. And so there, one time also, we were picking red peppers in a greenhouse, very hot. But again, again, if we didn't do it, there weren't other people to do it. That was the thing to do. On that same farm, another day, we also boxed melons. I don't remember how many tons, but around 20 tons of melons in one day. There were a lot of people, and also they had a system, like if they were this size, you do this. If they were larger, you pack them in a, less than if they were small. At the end of the day, in this mcallen farm, there was a treat, because the owners of the farm, you can switch to them. The owner of the farm, Dudu, and his family will prepare lunch for every volunteer. They will feed us after taking care of, doing our job. They will feed us. But this is the only place where they will feed us, every time we will box our lunchbox or cut some melons there if we were boxing melons, and that will be it. But he was so happy every time, like, don't leave, stay for lunch. There's nice cooked meal for everyone.
We also had the opportunity of doing some volunteer work in other places besides agriculture. We wanted to focus on agriculture, but this was an amazing opportunity. Actually, the Army has some offices in different parts. This one was in Tel Aviv, where actually you can go there and pack the kits that the medics in combat used to put the chest tubes. As you may realize, one of the important things while you're in the battle, if you get a gunshot wound to the chest, is to try to drain the blood as fast as possible, and the medic is capable to do that on the spot, up until you can, rescue or take the soldier to a safer place, to a hospital, and see what's going on. And this is extremely organized. But the beauty of the thing is that this is a place that actually is staffed and supported mainly by volunteers that do have learning disabilities. And actually, what you can see is that in Israel, everybody, no matter who, what you are, no matter, whatever you can do to help, you have the opportunity to come and help. And with us, were, some kids, some people not so young, actually, that did have some, different difficulties, and actually, they were so inspiring to see them, how they worked. They knew their task, they knew what they had to do, and actually, we were, we had a very, very special time while doing this.
Shuli.
Yeah, we can see in the picture Shuli and other people actually, telling us what we needed to do.
So this in this place, and this is very special for us here at Temple Emmanuel, because one day I had an idea, we had an idea, and I asked Alison Tawil to help us get this project through. So I met with Alison a couple of times, and she put together this project that was called Israel is in Need, Let's Do a Good Deed. So she organized the kids at Sunday school and prepared flyers so that every class will collect things that Israel needed. And how did we know? I got in contact with this person, Nava, the one on the right, in the middle, yes, the one on the right, who was a contact that my friends from Peru had given me in January, and she sent a list of things that were needed. So from personal things, hygienic things, and shampoo to like women's deodorant, several things. So again, Alison put together this project and collected all these items by classroom. So I said, Herschel, we are packing one bag less because we're taking that bag personally to Israel. So we packed the bag and brought that luggage to Israel. And we contact Nava, and they have a whole floor of the Tel Aviv Expo, one of the parking floors of the Expo Tel Aviv, dedicated to this organization, Errant Angels. And what they do is that they receive items in need for soldiers, but also in need for the people that has been displaced from the north and living in hotels. So, okay, so we show up with our luggage, and we see that they're pretty organized. And the lady Nava, again, the one on the middle, the one in blue, you can see I'm wearing my Shalom t-shirt from Temple Emmanuel. And she said, hey, I'm like, what? have you brought any women deodorant? I'm like, yes. Have you brought any tampons? Yes. Have you brought any women's shampoo? Yes. She's like, what? I'm like, what? We are packing today a lot of boxes just for women soldiers. And we need to transport this, among other stuff, to their base. So when we gave her that stuff that she needed that we brought, and together with other things, she goes, now we need transportation. And we said, we have a car, we can take it. No, but it's too far. I'm like, what do you mean it's too far? She's like, it's an hour and a half away in Moshav Petish.
We live in Texas.
I'm like, we live in Texas. An hour and a half doesn't sound like a lot to us. And she opened her eyes like, you will take this right now? I was like, yes, let's pack it, and then we'll take it. So we drove to Moshav Patish. Again, all these places that we were in the south, we were allowed to go. It wasn't like at the beginning when Jonathan was telling his experience. At this point, we were allowed to go all the way in the south. And this is called the Gaza envelope and all these areas. So we arrived in that car. That's my nephew's car. We arrived there, and Nathaniel welcomed us. So what happens is in this moshav, they have a house that has been given for the soldiers to rest when they come out of Gaza. Since it's so close to Gaza, they're in Gaza, they come out, they rest for a couple of days, they feed them and everything, they shower, they go back, and like that. So that car was filled with things for the girls soldiers, the women soldiers. So Herschel took the opportunity and prayed the Psalms together. Every time he had the opportunity, he did that. And he also told us the story that his daughter was in Gaza. So she was, at the time that we were there, his daughter was in Gaza. But the thing is that they wanted us to transport also other boxes for the male soldiers, but the car wasn't that big. So we told Nava in Aaron's Angels organization, don't worry, we'll come back in the morning. She's like, no, you're going to do this again? We're like, yes, that's what we're here for. That's why we came here. So the next day at 6 in the morning, we came back, put everything on the truck, and drove back again to our friend Nathaniel in Moshav Petish.
One of the real difficult days for us was through our niece. Actually, we learned that you're able to visit soldiers in Tel HaShomer. Tel HaShomer is the largest hospital in Tel Aviv, and actually has the largest rehab unit. And we actually gathered some coffee, some sweets, and some alfajores, which is a very
Argentinian, though.
Argentinian pastry, So we took them to the soldiers, and it was a very special time for us. It was a time of sadness. It was a time of not only, as well as joy, actually mixed feelings. One of the kids that we met was there with his father, that actually turned out to be his commander in the unit that they were in Gaza. And actually his father was visiting his son that had got wounded while he was in action. And they received us like family, and actually we ended up, having a very special day where what you sense is something very special that you can sense it only in Israel. Well, you can sense it particularly in Israel, and it's the fact that the pride, but also the realization that this is the need, this is what I do because I have to do it, because I'm protecting, and I have to do it because if I don't do it, nobody will do it. When we were talking with Nathaniel, actually, as Claudia mentioned before, we showed him the pictures of our 3 daughters. We always show the pictures of our 3 daughters, and he actually immediately pulled up the picture of his daughter Claudia mentioned, but and started to tell the story about the daughter that was deployed inside of Gaza in an active role. And actually, he didn't say it with fear. He said it with pride. He said it with the senses, this is what we do. And then that was followed by the fact that his son is in the Golanis, actually, and right now is becoming an officer of the Golani. And actually, it was also the same sense of pride. And when we visit the kids, who could be my son or your son there, in the hospital, you hurt because you see them, it's like your son is hurt. But also you feel like, this is the spirit that's going to keep Israel going. You know, and there's no doubt about that. You sense it, you feel it. Nobody has to tell you that.
So one day we went to visit the Nova Festival site. It was really, really hard to see the pictures together with the flag, the Israeli flag, at the same place, at the same spot where they were killed. So we took some time. Again, we drove there ourselves, so we took the time that we wanted, and walked between these posters and these photos and tried to see their faces and see who they were. When we were walking, I encountered particularly the pictures in the middle and on the right, just read their names in Hebrew and in English, but the one that has the hat, Iftach, everybody's name was written in Hebrew and in English and with a little broken heart in the middle. But in this poster, particularly in this poster, somebody wrote in pen, "Thank you for saving my life." So somebody had visited him and thanked him for saving her life. The one on the right, Jakey, has a little heart on the corner that says, "We will always love you, Mom and Dad." The one on the left, it's a picture of Kido. He was the DJ that helped people, save people's lives by telling them at the moment, because he was the DJ, one of the DJs at Nova Festival, he told some of the people where to run, in what direction. I don't know how he knew, but apparently he knew the area and knew how to get them to a safer place. Probably one of the hardest moments when we were in Israel, for sure.
We had the opportunity, actually, we saw a tent on the left side of the Nova Festival area, and actually there was a tent, and we went inside, and there was a young scribe, a young sofer, writing a Torah in the memory of one of the Air Force Commando soldiers from the Shaldag unit that actually showed up early and actually lost his life while saving the life of many of the kids that were there. And actually, as you may realize, you know, when the scribe is writing, one of the opportunities that you have is always to put your hand on the writing hand of the scribe while he's writing some letters. And again, when you're doing that, is you just feel it. Nobody else has to tell you any more words. There's no more words to be said. You just feel them deep inside. And obviously, it's a book about life. It's a book about remembering life and remembering the spirit of somebody that gave everything to save other people.
So when we were in Tel Aviv, we visited one day Kikar HaTufim, which is the square of the hostages, where they meet every Saturday. The families of the hostages, back then, at that time, I'm sure they keep doing the same now. They meet every Saturday, and you have the opportunity to visit with different stations in that square. And we knew before going, before I get to specifics, so that day marked, as you can see in the clock, the day 266 with 11 hours, 51 minutes, and 11 seconds. So they have that clock running since the time that they took them hostages. So we walked around and we knew that we were going to find a station dedicated to tell the story of Shlomi. Last year, we had a program of teaching Hebrew, here at Temple, and one of the girls that was taking our class, the Hebrew class, Chelsea, she would come very sad every Hebrew class. This was just last year. So she shared with us the story that her dear friend Shlomi, I forget his last name, Shlomi Tzif, was one of the hostages. And that she had talked to her mom, to his mom, and every time she came to Hebrew, right, Rabbi, she will tell us the update of what she knew about, which they didn't know anything, but she was always in contact with Shlomi's mom. So in June 8th, 6 hostages were rescued, and one of them was Shlomi. So we knew there was a station at the Kikar, at the square. So we went to and stopped by, and there was the whole story of Shlomi in those yellow papers. They also prepared, that you can see on the bottom left, he prepared with his friends this video that showed how it was, how he felt or how it was as a hostage in the tunnels. I didn't want to see that video, but Herschel did. Another station that we visited, another table, there was a family remember, these cousins remember Tamir Adar. He died, and that day was his birthday. And they wanted to give out little bottle openers because he liked to drink beer on his birthday, so they wanted us to all remember him, especially in that day.
And interestingly, in that day, while we were talking with the people in one of the stations, we shared with them that we were originally from Peru, and that one of the shlichim of the Anora Tzioni, which is the Zionist youth movement in Peru, was one of the hostages, and a guy, Eitan Horn, we knew him as Itu, or who knows him as Itu, and the lady told us, actually, Itu's father is here, would you like to talk with him? So we told him yes. So he was very gracious, his father, to actually meet with us. He shared, obviously, his message of hope and despair at the same time. 2 of his sons are kidnapped, and they are still in Gaza. They don't know if they are alive or not. Nobody knows what has happened to them, and obviously they continue to have the faith, that something good will happen at some point for them. It was very difficult, but I have to say that he was tremendously composed and very gracious to talk with us at that time.
So after that day, after visiting the hostage square, we walked to a demonstration that where many Israelis, thousands of Israelis meet in Tel Aviv every week, because they would like the government to do more to take the hostages back home, to bring them home. So we were there and listened for a while at their speeches and at their singing and chanting. And this is just couple of days before coming back home. You saw the picture that Jonathan also shared with us and also impacted us when we arrived, but also when we left, to see those posters of the hostages and to remember that there are still 101 hostages in Gaza that are not home yet. Our daughter, Nicole, she went to Israel this beginning of September. She's studying in Jerusalem for a semester, and then she's going to move to Tel Aviv. But right now, when she's in Jerusalem, she's sharing the stories. We talk to her every day. And one of the things she said was, Mom, every Shabbat, we say this ancient prayer, which is called Laheinu, which is it's a prayer to bring hostages home. So she says that every Shabbat, that's what they pray, together with all the kids that are in this year course program. And she said, would you please show the community today that prayer, because that's what we do every Shabbat. So I thought it would be good to show you a video. It's the prayer in Hebrew with a slideshow that I took from YouTube. But after that, maybe we can recite together in English the prayer, and we will project in the screen the words of the prayer.
All right, we posted only 1 second, so we maybe can directly link to the YouTube and, be able to show it. Obviously, hopefully we'll fix these technical difficulties.
I don't think we can. So
Oh, we can. So, as for our brothers and sisters, the whole house of Israel, who are given over to trouble or captivity, whether they abide on the sea or on the dry land, may the All-Present have mercy upon them, and bring them forth from trouble to enlargement, from darkness to light, and from subjection to redemption, now speedily and at a near time.
Amen. Thank you.
Amen. Thank you. I'm Israel Chai.
Thank you so much, Claudia and Herschel. I'm being told that we do have the video to be able to play of this prayer, which will be the perfect way to end this evening. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for creating this opportunity to come together as a family. Every single person who is here is part of that family, and we would not be a full house without any one of you who are here. Share these stories, carry them in your hearts, and may all of those who have been taken hostage be returned to their homes, to their families. May it be swiftly, may it be soon. Amen.